Hello, this is Mrs. McCreary. Today we're going to talk about the moon, and we're going to start off by talking about the origin theories. There are four main secular theories that we're going to quickly look at. So the first theory is fission theory, and this theory states that the Earth spun so fast that just like a big glob split off and then became the moon, and they say that that massive material came out of the Pacific Ocean. The issues with that is there's really not enough circular momentum unless the Earth has vastly slowed down. There really probably never was enough circular momentum to get that kind of break off because the idea is, it's spinning so fast that that little bit can't hold on anymore. And that takes a lot of momentum to break centrifugal force, which pulls everything into the center in a moving object. Also, if the moon had just split off, it would probably stay very close to the equator, and it doesn't do that. It ranges from about 18 to 28 degrees off the equator, so it's not in the right position for it to have just split off. Another issue is that as it split off, gravity would have kind of smushed it down. Instead of forming a ball, it would form, that's my cat, it would form just kind of rings, and it'd be more like Saturn. And then also, if this had been separated from Earth, it would be made out of the exact same materials. And while the rocks and the materials that have been brought back from the moon are very similar, they're not identical, so that poses an issue. Another theory is the capture theory, that some large object was floating through space and just kind of got caught in our gravity. Okay, so one of the issues with that is that space is huge. Sorry, my cat is smelling things. One of my daughter's favorite video games, the line is, space is so large that if you lost your keys in it, you'd probably never find them. Now clearly, that's a simplification, but it's just enormous, and the chances that, something would come within just the right distance to get caught in the gravity and not just fly right by, but also not hit the Earth, are really very small. Also, we've sent probes and little shuttles and things to other planets, to the moon, to Mars, on past that. They don't get caught in the gravity. Instead, they kind of slingshot around. So we've got our planet here, and the probe comes in, it gets caught in the gravity, and then gets shot back out. So it doesn't get stuck, it gets flung back out into space. So that's another big issue with that theory. Another theory is nebular contractions, very similar to the theory of planets coming from nebules. It's, a big cloud of dust just contracts and condenses, and gravity takes over and becomes the moon. So the issue with that is dust clouds currently are not that dense. I mean, the moon really, compared to Jupiter, it's really not that big. Compared to stars, it's really not that big. But compared to a cloud of dust, it is enormous. And as far as I'm aware, fairly solid all the way through. So that's a lot of material to just be in a dust cloud that is, again, happens to be next to Earth. So the main theory at this point in the secular science is the collision theory. And that states that another planetary object hit the Earth and the debris formed the moon. So again, something was just coming by, hit the Earth, and then all of the shards and dust and all that kind of condensed the nebular theory into the moon. And really, the article states that this is the main theory, mostly because there are just so many problems with the three previous theories. It's not that this theory is really amazing, it's just that it's the most probable out of the four. So that's very, very far away from proving it true. Again, some of the issues that are brought up is that, again, space is just really big. And so, again, the chances of something like that happening are just insanely small. And then also, if there was enough of an issue with this impact to blow off enough debris to form, again, the relatively large moon, that much energy, the force of that impact, would potentially melt the crust of the Earth. And we'd see a lot of different variation in the geological records and things like that that we're just not seeing. So those are the four main secular theories about where the moon comes from. Alright, so now that we've talked about where the moon comes from, we're just going to talk a little bit about the moon itself, some facts. The moon is our nearest neighbor. It's the closest planetary celestial object to us. Specifically, it is 250,000 miles away. And because of that, it is 1.3 light seconds away. So as this light travels from the sun to the moon, that light travels back to us in 1.3 seconds. That's how quickly the light can travel through that distance. There's no air on the moon. There's no water. And then without the air, there's no atmosphere, so they don't have any kind of sky or clouds or really anything like that. It has its own revolution and rotation, so it spins on its own axis, it rotates, it revolves around the Earth, and the amount of time it takes it to do those things is roughly the same. So it goes around its own axis and around the Earth at about the same rate, and that takes it about a month. And that is really how we gauge our own month. And then also, it's 1/4 of the size of Earth, but it only has 1/6 the gravity. So now gravity is based on, your weight is based on how much gravity pulls on you. Anyway, so let's say you weigh 60 pounds. So here you would weigh 60 pounds. On Earth, you would weigh on Earth you weigh 60 pounds. On the moon, because there's less mass, there's less moon pulling you into its center, then you would weigh 1/6 of that. You'd only weigh 10 pounds. Now there's still the same amount of you, there's just less moon pulling you. So how much you weigh is dependent on how much stuff there is around you, how much mass there is around you. Now, one thing we always have to be careful of is when we're talking about really anything in astronomy or anything in earth science is the age of anything. You always want to look at that and always challenge it, because anything that you get that is from really any source other than a specifically Christian source is going to say that anything in creation is millions, if not billions of years old. And you always want to be aware of that going into it, and you always want to really think about that. So we talked about the origin theories just a few minutes ago, and one of the theories does say that, or a few of the theories actually say that the Earth and the Moon started out right close to each other, and then over time has moved away. Now the problem with that is that if the Earth and the Moon were so close together, the Moon never would have moved away. The Earth's gravity and the Moon's gravity combined would just kind of hold them together. So the Moon never would have gone anywhere. And now we know through actual measurement, they put devices on the Moon in the Apollo missions. We know that the Moon is moving away. I think it's about 6 inches a year. But if they had started together, it never would have had the momentum to get to where it is now and to continue. There's also, lots and lots of craters all over the place, and, scientists used to think that again, took hundreds of thousands, millions of years, but now they're seeing that happens that can happen much more quickly. And so just the abundance of craters on the moon isn't really any indication of age. So we have this moon, but we always have to be aware that the moon was designed and has a purpose. So it has a design or a purpose. And some of those purposes are that it controls a lot of things on Earth. It controls the tides. It helps us with that regulation of water, keeping the oceans clean as they cycle through. Helps us understand the calendar, as because our calendar is based on the 12 months, which is based on the moon's rotation and revolution. And there are actually, I think our podcast that you listened to talked about the very specific ways that they would, be the ancient ancient Hebrews would be looking for the moon at a specific stage, and then they would count out, and that's when they would have their Passover, their most sacred holiday. It also lets us know directions. There are, because of the specificity of the rotation and revolution, the way the moon looks, whether it's a full moon or a quarter moon or a three-quarter moon, a waning gibbous or a waxing gibbous, that all can help us know our directions. It also helps us know where the sun is also. Now, because of its location, the moon does impact the angle of the axis of the Earth, and so that is what gives us our seasons, because remember that angle of, here's the Earth, and remember the axis isn't straight up and down, it is at an angle, and that is because of the moon. And then as this angle changes because of its the angle doesn't change, but as the Earth gets more direct sunlight or less direct sunlight due to where it is in relation to the sun, that's where we get our seasons. And then also the moon provides us with a nightlight. It gives us that opportunity to see things at night. So that way, we know that really we know we're not alone. In our country, it's not such a big issue because we have electric lights and street lights and all these other things. But in other countries and in history, people didn't have that, and so the moon was there to give them light and to provide them with that ability to move around and still be productive after the sun goes down. But it is very easy to see that, especially in our country in our day and age, to see that as just evidence that the moon is faithful witness to God's creation. It's there. It's always there. It goes through its waning and waxing, but it's always there, and we can see it, and it's proof that it was created. It's proof that it's there. In the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, there's this lovely little organism that they talk about, and they say the argument in the book is that it has proved the non-existence of God, because their theory is this organism couldn't have evolved by accident because it's just too useful. And they state, God says that I refuse to prove my existence because proof denies faith, and without faith I am nothing. And they say, well, this organism proves that you're there, so therefore by your own logic you're not. Which is fine, except God never said that. God proves himself all the time. We're the ones who have difficulty seeing that. God proves himself every day when the sun comes up, and then every night when the moon comes up. And really what we have to understand is that God is beyond our understanding. We can't understand God's creation because we're not perfect. We were put into this wonderful, perfect system, a perfect world, where, I don't know, maybe we had the potential to understand it all, but then we sinned and we lost that potential. We lost that understanding. Um, whether God gave us that ability to begin with or not, or whether God, kept that for himself. But there's just so much of God that we don't understand and we can't understand, and we just really have to fall back on our faith, even if we can see that God has proved he exists, we still don't know how he does everything or why he does everything. And so there is still that need for faith. And even if there isn't a need for faith, there's definitely that need for love, because that is what God created us for, is to love him and worship him in all ways that we can.